Sundays?
I do not. And I do not because I think if you look at all the burdens that we have on small business owners, one of the things they complain about the most is extending parking meters. And when you're paying $4.50 an hour, $5 an hour for a parking meter out in West Portal or another small business corridor, your business oftentimes leaves and goes to South City or Daly City instead of staying right here in San Francisco. Yes. I do not think that we should be nickel and dime residents any more than we already have. And the fact of the matter is that why we are doing things like that is because we haven't had a realistic discussion in this city about what role government should play in people's lives and what people are willing to pay for. So we overlayer them with parking meter rates and fees to nickel and dime left and right. And I don't think that's the way to enhance that discussion. It also disproportionately impacts lower and moderate income folks who are the ones least able to afford that extra burden. So something I'm not in favor of.
Follow-up question, real quick. How high should a parking ticket be?
Well, I know it shouldn't be. I can tell you right now, when they used to be $25 an hour, I plead guilty. I played a little bit of Russian roulette, and I'd sit there and amortize it out over the course of a year, and say the amount of times I get caught versus the amount of times I don't get caught, it evens out. But when it's $75 an hour, my wife isn't nearly as forgiving as she once was for parking ticket.
All right, thank you. Next name up. Michela, Alioto-Pier. I know you're big on education. This question is, do you support Proposition 8 making it city policy that every family should have the choice of sending their children to a quality neighborhood school?
Yes, I do. I strongly support it. I made the choice to send my children to neighborhood schools. We go to Catholic schools, but we go to schools within our neighborhoods. And one thing that I have found as we look at San Francisco and as we look at the children in San Francisco, we're losing our kids. We have fewer children per capita in our beautiful city than any other city in the nation. And a lot of it comes down to school choice. We hear that time in and time out. People's ability to choose where they send their child to school. What we've also heard from in certain communities is that when you look at certain communities, especially those in the Bayview and Asian communities in the Richmond, they want their kids close to them. They don't want them taking 45-minute bus rides across town. The choice is a real valid one. When you have your children close to you, you set up programs within your communities, your churches and community centers, and your tutorials and athletic programs, and the kids have something to do. They're not spending all their time on uni. And so when it comes down to a family's choice, they need to be able to choose.
And how do you balance that really quickly was to make sure that all the schools are fair and that there's diversity?
Well, we certainly need diversity, and we need to make sure that all of our schools across the board are good. And one thing that we see is that when we don't have neighborhood schools, we have families who aren't investing in them. And when a school is in your community, you have a higher level of parental involvement, and you have a higher level of community support.
Next up. Public Defender Jeff Adachi. Would you support increasing the number of residential condo conversions allowed each year?
I think it's a question of looking at the housing stock and looking at the rental stock that's available, because unless we have a balance, we will always be in a position of not being able to provide housing. And so my answer to that question is it depends on the situation, because you're not going to be able to continue to provide the kind of housing needs that we have in the city. And we know that on both sides, whether it's a rental or a homeowner, that we need to have the housing stock that's available to everyone.
Okay, so back to the question. Are you in favor of increasing I know it's a hot political issue and it's one that's rife with controversy, but when it comes to residential condo conversion, that's where do you stand? Are you in favor of increasing it or what?
I am in favor of increasing it, but we have to make sure that we balance it against the other needs, particularly rental needs in the city.
So you're in favor of increasing it on condition?
That's right.
San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee.
Hi, Phil.
Hello. Back to a transportation issue. Do you favor charging drivers a London-style congestion fee for driving in and out of the downtown?
No, I do not. I think it's premature. We haven't gone that far in our studies for congestion pricing, I think you're referring to. But I do say that we need to support Muni. We need to make sure that people are taking public transportation in every respect, and we need to incentivize that behavior to do so. So I'm in favor of incentivizing public transportation. I'm in favor of our SF Park program that we just started with SFMTA, which means people who are looking for parking can find it on their cell phones in a modern way, as long as they're not using the cell phone while they're driving. We have to work on that because that'll be a high ticket price. But ultimately, I think congestion pricing is premature. We haven't done enough research for it. It will cause other repercussions that we're not ready for. And I also think that there's a very strong feeling from the neighborhoods and the businesses they're not ready for it as well.
Okay, what about congestion pricing? The parking meters going up and down.
Yes, I mean, I'm in favor of adjusted pricing for parking where there's a high demand in certain areas. We can charge a little more so we can incentivize people to go to other areas. I mean, that's what SF Park does as a program, is allows you to see where the less expensive parking might be so that you can walk a block or two a little bit more to get to where you need to go. But it's smart because it prevents congestion, it prevents the muni buses and pedestrian safety issues from coming aboard when you have a pricing that's fixed to areas where we can get more parking or have more parking available and not congest the areas where it's most popular.
And parking tickets, do you think there's such a thing as a too high price on parking
Oh,
tickets?
absolutely, absolutely. I've heard from many small businesses, and I know that they have reached their limit when it comes to parking prices. I think, again, we need to work with every commercial quarter of our city to make sure we get their input about the parking policies of the city. And I will ensure that with Ed Riskin being at the helm of the MTA.
Former Supervisor Bevan Dufty. And this is a supervisorial question.
All right.
Would you support a charter amendment creating a combination of 11 both citywide and district supervisorial seats?
That's a system that they use in Washington, D.C., and some people do like it, that you have both a combination of at-large and district. I was a district elected supervisor, and I think it's valuable and worthwhile. I liked having a district to focus on and be responsible for. So unless I saw outcry, which I haven't seen from the citizenry, I'm content with the system as it is.
So, by the way, how do you feel about ranked choice voting? Okay, Supervisor. David Chiu. What are the three most critical problems facing the city at this time?
First and foremost, we have lost tens of thousands of jobs in the last couple of years, hundreds of companies over the last decade. I think we need to build a 21st century economy here in the city. The second challenge I think facing us is in recent years our demographics have changed significantly. We've lost thousands of families. We have lost almost half of our African American community. We've lost thousands of tenants who've been evicted, homeowners who have been foreclosed upon. We need to change those trends and make sure that family flight is halted, make sure that the economic, the ethnic, the diversity that we love about our city manages to stay here. I think the third most significant challenge has to do with how we are running our government. We have a $6.8 billion, 26,000 employee, 50 department corporation known as the City and County of San Francisco. I don't think anyone here in this room thinks that we get $6.8 billion worth of value for that. And there are many, many things I think we need to do to make our government more efficient.
Okay, give us two.
There are 15 departments that regulate the business community. There are actually 14 departments that provide workforce programs. We need to consolidate, we need to streamline to make sure that those of us who are trying to create jobs in the city, those of you who run small businesses, aren't getting nickel and dime to death, aren't having to be shuttled around from bureaucrat to do the work that you want to do.
And the other one?
Those, I was trying to bundle two in one, but I'll give another one. One of the reasons families are leaving San Francisco is we don't have enough child care. Only 40% of our city, of our parents actually have access to child care. There are 3 city programs that govern child care policy. We need to consolidate that.
Assessor Reporter Phil Ting. Will you be supporting or opposing the $248 million road repaving and street safety bond measure that is going to be on the November ballot?
I'll be supporting it, but I have grave reservations that we aren't setting aside enough revenue in our annual budget, in our general fund, to make sure that we're making these maintenance every single year. I don't think the city should really have to do a road repaving bond. I know that we're in this situation because we have tough fiscal issues, but I think that we need to be fiscally more prudent, to be setting aside that money into infrastructure. It's easy to defer all that every single year. I know we have very, very tough decisions to make, but I know that we need to prioritize infrastructure and long-term viability for our city. We need to make sure that roads are paved. We need to make sure we're investing in beauty. We need to make sure we're investing in all the water undergrounds. And I think that that's so important to make sure that our city is as vibrant as possible so that we can continue to grow, not just population-wise, but business-wise.
But we hear that time and time again, and then when it's budget time, we have everybody come to City Hall and say we need money for our ongoing programs, and so the road money goes there. What can you do to stop that?
Well, I think you're going to have to continue to try and become more efficient in San Francisco. One thing that we've done is, in our office, is try to figure out how we can grow revenue. We brought in over $300 million above our budget over the last 6 years, just by investing in making things more efficient. I think that a lot of times in government, as Supervisor Chiu talked about, we're going to be needing to continue to become more efficient. If every single Muni bus line actually was 1 minute faster, just think about just 60 seconds faster, that would save $20 million. That would be enough to actually implement the first phase of our transit effectiveness plan, which we say we don't have any money for. So just by doing some of those things to make things more efficient, it's literally like adding more buses on the road.
State Senator Leland. What would you do to increase the economic growth in the city?
Well, first off, what I'm going to do is to change the general reputation of the city of San Francisco that we are unfriendly towards business. And I might just suggest that one of the things that we ought to do is to assign case managers to different merchant corridor, to different types of industries, to different types of businesses. We do that in the social service field, of which I know quite a bit. And we ought to then assign those case managers to different businesses and make sure that we in City Hall knows that if there's a problem, that we deal with those kinds of problems a lot sooner than later. I don't want to hear about businesses so frustrated that they're ready to leave San Francisco. I want to hear about the problems early on and to see if we can take care of those problems early on and then deal with, then figure out how we can maybe help them expand their business and their stay in San Francisco. I think that that's just one small example of what I want to do to make San Francisco a lot more business friendly.
You know, it's like I said, we hear this time and time again through the years, and then when I talk to small business people, they say, I just got hit with this bill for the city for repainting my white zone, and it's gone up to a couple of $100 more. I'm now being hit with this fee for this inspection. It seems like their fees just keep coming right in as a way to balance the budget. How do you accomplish both?
Well, what I propose, no one has ever talked about. No one has ever talked about assigning case managers to businesses. That's been a model that's been used on the healthcare side, social service side. I think that we need to do that. If we had case managers, we would not have businesses saying that, you know, I'm at a brink where I need to leave San Francisco because the fees are too much, the taxes are too much, the bureaucracy is just too much. by having these case managers, you would then know that there are problems early on. And so you don't end up having businesses so frustrated that they're just one step outside of San Francisco or ready to leave out of San Francisco. So having those case managers would in fact prevent the kinds of things that you're suggesting.
They'd also be spending a lot of time down at City Hall, since a lot of the problem seems to be emanating from there.
Well, you know me. I'm going to make sure that those individuals are going to be out in the neighborhoods and the communities and not stuck in City Hall.
We've had a couple of these mayoral debates, and there's usually been somebody in the audience at the end that comes up and says to me, "Why didn't we ask this question?" So I'm going to. It's this question that popped up.
Intensely curious.
Yes, it's a very simple one. People in the city now are feeling less and less safe when they go out. What can you do about it?
Well, first of all, it starts with how we budget. Because when we have budget deficits, we cut every department equally, and we do top-down deficit management. We have to do bottom-up budgeting, where we go department by department and we figure out what are the investments in the critical services that we absolutely need to ensure safety and security in the community. That's making sure that we don't cut back in our investment in things like police and fire, number one. I also think it's critically important that our policemen live in the city, because such a small amount do. And while we can't impact the ones now that have already moved out, but as we have new recruits of classes, I would love to set up structures with local financial institutions to provide low-cost loans for the new recruits as they're getting out of the academy, so they have the ability to buy homes. And then by the time they pay off those mortgages, they're retired, they're still living in our community, they're walking our streets and help ensuring our security.
And what would your evaluation of the safety of San Francisco streets be right now, in your opinion?
I think in some areas it feels safe and secure, and I think in other areas of the city it does not. So I just think, and I think that's another problem that we have in our community, that we have to make sure that we are supporting all of our residents, that we're making sure that all of our neighborhoods are supported and safe, and I don't think that's the case right now. I spend a lot of time at muni stops and going door to door. I've met with thousands and thousands of residents, and I do hear differences depending on the neighborhood you're in.
Do you support Dennis Herrera's gang injunctions, or they call for church stops? Do you?
I'm supportive of preventive care. I think that as a mother of a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old, a brain is not fully developed until the age of 24. And I think what we need to do, when kids make bad decisions and unfortunately are in tough situations, rather than being punitive and putting them in detention, I think we have to look for preventative solutions. That's why I'm a big supporter of community schools, where we're providing additional resources for kids, whether that's social work or after-school programs, to give them the support that they need to be successful in life and not to be punitive.
San Francisco, former supervisor Tony Hall.
Come on out with it, Phil.
Oh, come on. It's just such an easy one for you. I just don't know what to say. Okay. Where do you stand on the two pension reform measures going forward?
I am not supporting either one. Let me try to tell you why, though. We have a $7 billion debt when it comes to pension reform that has to be paid off. A $7 billion debt. It's growing by $500 million every year. $500 million every year. Ed Lee's City Family Consensus Plan was really kicking the can down the road, like my commercial says, because it's going to add $4.5 billion onto that growing debt in the next 6 years. Jeff Adachi's plan is a little bit better, cuts that debt growth a little bit more, but it's only going to save about $4 billion. Let me draw a parallel, if I can. There's a big brick wall out there. It's called bankruptcy. Several other cities in the state of California have already gone into bankruptcy. This car is traveling 100 miles an hour towards that wall. Ed Lee's plan slows the impact down to 95 miles an hour. Jeff Adachi's plan slows it down to 90 miles an hour. Tony Hall's plan What I will do as mayor is change the pension benefits and health benefits paid to our employees to be in line with the private sector. Things like 401ks, reinstitute pay for performance, like the old civil service system called for.
So you would go from a fixed rate pension return to a 401k plan for public employees?
That would be one of the alternatives. I would also increase the benefits paid, the contributions paid by unvested employees. The cops and the firemen union never got this straight. My plan would protect those vested in the system. It would require new contributions on the part of new hirees and people brought into the system for their higher contributions for their health care and their pensions. And it could be paid off over a period of time because we have to bite the bullet because of the past promises made by mayors who promised.
But aren't you passing the bullet down to the new hires to bite?
Oh, absolutely. There's no other way to do this.
So the ones that have it now are...
You cannot break your promises, and Tony Hall as mayor will not break his promises.
Let's work that into a good commercial. Okay, Supervisor John Avalos. Real quick, people have asked about this one repeatedly. They say that City Hall in the past couple of years has been dysfunctional, and it now appears to at least be getting on some sort of track as mayor. What would you do to keep it on that, or is that a healthy course?
Well, I think there's been a lot of discussion about civility and how important it is. I think it's important, but I think vision is also important for San Francisco. And I also wonder about civility. If we're just being civil to each other within City Hall and we're not being civil with the residents of the city, are we really doing the work that we really need to be doing? I have concerns about how City Hall has been operating lately. I believe that it's forgetting the small businesses and residents, especially residents on the southern part of San Francisco and the southeast sector of San Francisco, my district especially. We have a foreclosure crisis that's happening in this city, and civility is not doing much to deal with that. In fact, the civility of City Hall is not really even aware that we have a crisis like that in San Francisco. So for me, to have a functional government, it has us working together and cordially working together, but also understanding what's outside of San Francisco that we need to be civil at to respond to.
Okay, because there's a line, the question is sort of the line between debate, differences in policy, and things getting personal. So, in your opinion on things getting personal down there?
Actually, I don't believe it's necessary to get personal in politics, and I've actually been able to practice politics that has not been that. And I can get easily with the tension of debate, with the tension of policy decisions that we have to make and disagreement. That's part of the political process. That's part of democracy. San Francisco has an amazing tradition of civic participation that I think is it's healthy in the city, and I want to see it continue and grow. Sometimes we have disagreements, but when they become personal, that's when I think that we fail to do what's best for the public good.
Thank you. And I must say it is entertaining. And speaking of the personal and the political, now we're going to have them all mixed up because I'm going to draw names.